My name's Nick, I'm a maths tutor, and today we're going to go through Edexcel Maths GCSE paper 1H from 2020. Let's go. The first 5 terms of an arithmetic sequence are 1, 4, 7, 10 and 13. Write down an expression in terms of n for the nth term of this sequence. So we can see there's a difference of 3 between each of the terms, and we can think about our sequence as being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for n. 3n would be 3, 6, 9, 12 and 15. And then we can see there's a difference of 2 between the sequence, so we do 3n minus 2, and that gives us 1, 4, 7, 10 and 13, which means our final answer is 3n minus 2. Then we need to show that 2 and a third times 3 and 3/4 is equal to 8 and 3/4. So we convert these into improper fractions, and we find that 2 and a third is 7/3, and 3 and 3/4 is 15/4. We then multiply these together, so we have 7 over 3 times 15 over 4. The 3 and the 15 terms simplify to 1 and 5, as you can see here, and we end up with 35 over 4. This gives us 8 and 3/4, and that is our final answer. The diagram shows 4 graphs. Each of the equations in the table is the equation of one of the graphs. Complete the table. So we have y equals minus x cubed, y equals x cubed, y equals x squared, and y equals 1 over x. So we can look at y equals x cubed and see that is graph C. Y equals minus x cubed is going to be b because it's a reflection in the y-axis, and then we can see that y equals x squared is going to be d. This leaves us with a as y equals 1 over x, and that is our final answer. The diagram shows 4 triangles. 2 of these triangles are congruent. Write down the letters of these 2 triangles. So the first thing to do is look at the angles that are missing in triangles A and D. We can see in triangle A that we do 180 minus 55, we get 125, and then subtract that from 45 and we end up with 80. So 80 is the missing angle. We can see therefore that in triangle D the missing angle is going to be 55 because we already have 45 and 80 already. So because they all have the same angles and the length of 10 centimeters lies on the same side for each of the triangles, they are congruent. Sean pays £10 for 24 chocolate bars. He sells all 24 chocolate bars for 50p each. Work out Sean's percentage profit. So we need to find out how much money he's made. So we do 24 times 50p, which gives us £12. 12 minus £10, because that's how much he paid for all the chocolate bars, divided by 10 will give us the percentage increase. We have 2 over 10, which is 20%, so therefore he's made 20% percentage profit. ADC is a triangle. AED and ABC are straight lines. EB is parallel to DC. Angle EBC is 148 degrees. Angle ADC is 63 degrees. Work out the size of angle EAB. You must give a reason for each stage of your working. So the first thing to do is mark out the angle we're looking for, which is EAB, and we're going to label that theta. Angle AEB is going to be 63 degrees because corresponding angles are equal, and we can see that it corresponds with the angle ADC, as we're given in the question. Angle EBA is going to be 180 degrees minus 148 degrees, which is 32 degrees, since the angles in a straight line sum to 180 degrees. So then to find angle EAB, we do 180 minus 63 minus 32, and that leaves us with 180 minus 95, which is 85 degrees, because the angles in a triangle sum to 180, and therefore that is our final answer. The table shows information about the heights in centimetres of a group of Year 9 girls. The stem and leaf diagram shows information about the heights in centimetres of a group of 15 Year 9 boys. Compare the distribution of the heights of the girls with the distribution of the heights of the boys. So what we need to do here is compare the medians and the ranges. So we can see for the girls the range is 20 centimetres because we do 170 minus 150. And then for the boys we can find the range and we do 182, which is the largest value, minus 158, which is the smallest value, and that gives us 24 centimetres as our range. Then we can find the median, and we can just do this by crossing off each term until we end up in the middle, which is 168 centimetres as our median. So the answer is the median height of the boys is 3 centimetres larger at 168 centimetres against the girls 165 centimetres, and the range of heights of the boys is 4 centimetres larger at 24 centimetres against the girls 20 centimetres. So here you need to compare the range and the median and quote both values and make sure that they're included in your answer to get all the marks. The diagram shows a prism placed on a horizontal floor. The prism has height 3 meters, the volume of the prism is 18 meters cubed, the pressure on the floor due to the prism is 75 newtons per meter squared. Work out the force exerted by the prism on the floor. So we can do 18 meters cubed divided by 3 meters to find the surface area of the hexagon facing the floor, and this is going to be 6 meters squared. Then, using this, we can use pressure equals force over area and rearrange this to pressure times area equals force. Since we're given the pressure in the question and we've just found the area facing the floor, we do 75 times 6 and that gives us 450 newtons as our answer. Then we need to write these numbers in order of size and start with the smallest number. So what I do here is change all of the values into standard form. So 6.72 times 10 to the 5 is already in standard form, so we can move on. We then get 6.72 times 10 to the minus 3 for the second term, 6.72 times 10 to the 6 for the third term, and then 6.72 times 10 to the minus 4 for the fourth term. By comparing all of these values, we can then write them in order, but make sure you write the original values quoted in the question. So this leaves us with 0.000672, 67.2 times 10 to the minus 4, 6.72 times 10 to the 5, and 672 times 10 to the 4. Given that A over B equals 2/5 and B over C equals 3/4, find A to B to C. So we know the ratio of A to B is going to be 2 to 5, as we can see that from our fraction above. We can also see the ratio of B to C is going to be 3 to 4, as we can see again. So we multiply the A to B ratio by 3, and we end up with 6 to 15, and we multiply the B to C ratio by 5 to get 15 to 20. We do this so that the B term is the same for both. We can then write a full ratio of 6 to 15 to 20, which is our final answer. Find the value of the fourth root of 81 times 10 to the power of 8. So we know 81 is the same as 9 squared, and therefore it's the same as 3 to the power of 4. 10 to the power of 8 is the same as 10 squared to the power of 4, so we can write this as the fourth root of 3 to the power of 4 times 10 squared to the power of 4. This simplifies to 3 times 10 squared because we remove all of the fourth powers that we had in our previous equation, and that leaves us with 300 when we expand it. Find the value of 64 to the power of minus a half. So when we have a minus a half, that means we have 1 over the square root of that number, which means we have 1 over the square root of 64 here. That gives us 1 over 8, and therefore 1/8 is our final answer. Write 3n over 9n minus 1 as a power of 3. So 9 is equal to 3 squared, and therefore our denominator can be written as 3 squared to the power of n minus 1. When we expand this, we end up with 3 to the power of 2n minus 2, and then we can move on. We now have 3n over 3 to the power of 2n minus 2. This can be rearranged to 3 to the power of n times 3 to the power of minus 2n plus 2, because we've made all of the denominator powers negative. Then we end up with 3 to the power of minus n plus 2, because we add all of our indices, and we end up with 3 to the power of 2 minus n as our final answer. The table gives information about the weekly wages of 80 people. Complete the cumulative frequency table. So what we do here is we write the frequency and we add as we go. So we do 5 plus 10, which is 15, then 15 plus 20, which is 35, and so on, and you end up with 5, 15, 35, 55, 70, and 80. On the grid opposite, draw a cumulative frequency graph for your completed table. So the first thing I did is I wrote down all of the points I'm going to need to draw on my cumulative frequency graph. This is going to be 250 and 5, 315, 350 and 35, 455, 450 and 70, and 580. So when I plot all of these, you can see them on the graph here, and then we join them all up with straight lines, and we end up with our graph as you can see here. In the mark scheme, it says it will ignore anything to the left of 250, so you can just ignore that for this question. Juan says that 60% of this group of people have a weekly wage of £360 or less. Is Juan correct? You must show how you got your answer. So the first thing to do is multiply 80, the number of people, by 60%, and this leaves us with 48. So we know we look at the cumulative frequency from less than 48. So we use our graph to find out what wage that would be, and we end up with £380. So therefore Juan is incorrect. No, 60% of this group have a weekly wage of £380 or less. Liquid A and liquid B are mixed to make liquid C. Liquid A has a density of 70 kilograms per meter cubed. Liquid A has a mass of 1400 kilograms. Liquid B has a density of 280 kilograms per meter cubed. Liquid B has a volume of 30 meters cubed. Work out the density of liquid C. So the density is equal to the mass over the volume, and therefore the mass is equal to density times volume, and the volume is equal to the mass over the density. The volume of A is going to be the mass of A divided by the density of A, which is 1400 over 70, which gives us 20 meters cubed. The mass of B is going to be 280 times 30, because that's the density times the volume. This leaves us with 8,400 kilograms, and then we can add the mass of A and B to find the mass of C. So we do 1400 plus 8,400, and we get 9,800 kilograms as the mass of C. The volume of C is going to be the volume of A plus the volume of B, which is 20 plus 30, which is 50 meters cubed. Then we can find the density of C, which is going to be the mass of C over the volume of C, which is 9,800 divided by 50. If we multiply the top and bottom by 2, we end up with 19,600 over 100, and then we can just divide the top by 100 and we end up with 196 as our final answer. Sally plays 2 games against Martin. In each game, Sally could win, draw or lose. In each game they play, the probability that Sally will win against Martin is 0.3. The probability that Sally will draw against Martin is 0.1. Work out the probability that Sally will win exactly one of the 2 games against Martin. So the first thing I did was draw a tree of all the possibilities of the game results. So we have a win, draw or loss for each game played. And we can see that if Sally is to win exactly one of these games, we have a win followed by a win followed by a draw followed by a win, or a loss followed by a win. So we need to find out the probability of getting a loss, and that's 1 minus 0.3 minus 0.1, which is 0.6. Then we can figure out the probabilities of each of these events happening. So the probability of a win followed by the probability of a draw is going to be 0.3 times 0.1, which is 0.03. The probability of a win followed by the probability of a loss is going to be 0.3 times 0.6, which is 0.18. The probability of a draw followed by the probability of a win is going to be 0.1 times 0.3, which is 0.03. And the probability of a loss followed by the probability of a win is going to be 0.6 times 0.3, which is 0.18. We then add all of these together and we end up with 0.06 plus 0.36, and that gives us 0.42 as our final answer. The straight line L1 has equation y equals 3x minus 4. The straight line L2 is perpendicular to L1 and passes through the point 9,5. Find an equation of line L2. So L1 is y equals 3x minus 4, and therefore the perpendicular gradient is going to be minus 1/3 because it's the negative reciprocal. So now that we have the gradient, we can write L2 as y equals minus 1/3 x plus c, and we substitute our value of 9,5 into there to find the value of c. So we have 5 equals 1/3 times 9 plus c, and then that simplifies to 5 is equal to minus 3 plus c, and we end up with 8 is c, so then our final answer is y is equal to 1/3 x plus 8. Shirley wants to find an estimate for the number of bees in her hive. On Monday she catches 90 of the bees, she puts a mark on each bee and returns them to her hive. On Tuesday she catches 120 of the bees, she finds that 20 of these bees have been marked. Work out an estimate for the total number of bees in her hive. So we have 20 over 120 which have been marked versus total that have been taken on the Tuesday. This is equal to 90 over B because we have the 90 bees she's caught from the whole sample and marked. Therefore B, the total population of the bees, is going to be 90 times 120 over 20, which is 90 times 6, which is therefore 540 as our final answer. Shirley assumes that none of the marks had rubbed off between Monday and Tuesday. If Shirley's assumption is wrong, explain what effect this would have on your answer to part A. If some of the marks had been rubbed off, the answer to part A would be an overestimate. This is because we would have had fewer than we expected, which means that it would seem that the population is larger than it actually is, therefore making it an overestimate. Make f the subject of the formula d equals 3 times 1 minus f over f minus 4. We can rearrange this to remove the fractions, so we get d times f minus 4 is equal to 3 times 1 minus f. This expands to 3 minus 3f. df minus 4d is equal to 3 minus 3f. Here we've just expanded everything on the left hand side as well. Then we get df plus 3f is equal to 3 plus 4d by moving all the f terms to one side. We can then substitute f out the left hand side, so we get f times d plus 3 is equal to 3 plus 4d, and then we rearrange to get f is equal to 3 plus 4d over d plus 3, which is our final answer. X is proportional to the square root of y, where y is greater than 0. Y is increased by 44%, work out the percentage increase in x. So we know x is proportional to the square root of y, and if we had the square root of 1.44 times y, which is a 44% increase in y, we could write this as the square root of 1.44 times the square root of y. This is going to be 1.2 times the square root of y, which means that there's a 20% increase for x. F and g are functions such that fx equals 12 over root x and gx is equal to 3 times 2x plus 1. Find g of 5. So g of 5 is going to be 3 times 2 times 5 plus 1 because we replaced the x with a 5. Then we get 3 times 10 plus 1 because we expand the 2 times 5, and that leaves us with 3 times 11, which is 33. Find gf of 9. So we can write this as a nested bracket. We have g of f of 9. So firstly, f of 9 is going to be 12 over the square root of 9 because we replaced the x, and therefore we're going to have g of 12 over square root of 9. This is going to be the same as g of 12 over 3, which is the same as g of 4. G of 4 is going to be 3 times 2 times 4 plus 1, and therefore that's going to be 3 times 8 plus 1, which is 3 times 9, which is 27. Finally, we need to find the inverse function of g of 6. So the first thing to do is find the inverse function of g. So we write y equals 3 times 2x plus 1. y over 3 is equal to 2x plus 1, and therefore y over 3 minus 1 is equal to 2x. If we divide both sides by 2, we end up with x is equal to y over 6 minus a half. So therefore the inverse function of x for g is going to be x over 6 minus a half, and therefore the inverse function of g for 6 is going to be 6 over 6 minus a half, which is 1 minus a half, which leaves us with a half as our final answer. Show that the square root of 180 minus 2 root 5 over 5 root 5 minus 5 can be written in the form a plus root 5 over b, where a and b are integers. So the first thing is 180 definitely divides by 5 because it ends in 0. So we do 180 divided by 5, which is 36. So we can write the square root of 180 as root 36 times root 5. This simplifies to 6 times root 5, and then we can move on. We now have 6 root 5 minus 2 root 5 over 5 root 5 minus 5. This simplifies to 4 root 5 over 5 root 5 minus 5, and then we can multiply this by 5 root 5 plus 5 over 5 root 5 plus 5 to remove the square root from the denominator. This gives us 20 times 5 plus 20 root 5 over 25 times 5 minus 25. This is equal to 100 plus 20 root 5 over 125 minus 25, which simplifies to 100 plus 20 root 5 over 100, and then we divide everything by 20, so we end up with 5 plus root 5 over 5. This simplifies to 1 plus root 5 over 5, which is the form that we needed for our final answer. DEF is a triangle. P is the midpoint of FD, Q is the midpoint of DE, FD is equal to A, and FE is equal to B. Use a vector method to prove that PQ is parallel to FE. So the first thing to do is draw the line between P and Q so we know where it is, and then we can draw on the vectors we're given in the question. So we know that FD is going to be A and FE is going to be B. We also know that PD is going to be a half A and FP is going to be a half A too. And now we can work out DE. So DE is going to be minus FD plus FE, which is minus A plus B. So since we know that Q is the midpoint of DE, we can say that DQ is going to be a half minus A plus B, and QE is going to be a half minus A plus B. PQ is equal to PD plus DQ, which is a half A plus a half times minus A plus B. This expands to a half A minus a half A plus a half B, which means that PQ is equal to a half B. PQ is a half B and FE is B, so therefore 2PQ is equal to FE, which means that they are both parallel since FE is a multiple of PQ. The diagram shows two shaded shapes A and B. Shape A is formed by removing a sector of a circle with radius 3x minus 1 cm from a sector of the circle with radius 5x minus 1 cm. Shape B is a circle of diameter 2 minus 2x cm. The area of shape A is equal to the area of shape B. Find the value of x. You must show all your working. So, first and foremost, the area of A is going to be 45 over 360, because that gives us the sector of the circle, times pi r squared of the large circle minus pi r squared of the smaller circle. So we have pi times 3x minus 1 plus 2x squared minus pi times 3x minus 1 squared. 45 over 360 simplifies to 1/8, and we can factor out the pi term from the rest of the equation. So we end up with an 1/8 pi times 5x minus 1 squared minus 9x squared minus 6x plus 1, because we've expanded 3x minus 1 squared. This then gives us an 1/8 pi times 25x squared minus 10x plus 1, because we've expanded 5x minus 1 squared, and then minus 9x squared minus 6x plus 1. When we match up all the terms and simplify, we end up with an 1/8 pi times 16x squared minus 4x. And as you can see, we can factor out a 4 from that equation, so we end up with a half pi times 4x squared minus x. Now we need to find the area of B, and we're given the diameter, so we need to divide this by 2 to get the radius. So we do pi times 2 minus 2x over 2 squared. This gives us pi times 1 minus x squared, and this expands to pi times 1 minus 2x plus x squared. The area of A is equal to the area of B, so therefore a half pi times 4x squared minus x is going to be equal to pi times 1 minus 2x plus x squared. We divide both sides by pi and multiply by 2, and we end up with 4x squared minus x is equal to 2 minus 4x plus 2x squared. When we rearrange this, we get 2x squared plus 3x minus 2 equals 0, and this factorizes to 2x minus 1 times x plus 2 equals 0. This means x is equal to a half or minus 2, and since we know that x has to be a positive value, we're going to end up with x is equal to a half as our final answer. There are 4 types of cards in a game. Each card is a black circle or a white circle or a black triangle or a white triangle. The number of cards with a black shape as a ratio to the number of cards with a white shape is 3 to 5, and the number of cards with a circle to the number of cards with a triangle is 2 to 7. express the total number of cards with a black shape as a fraction of the total number of cards with a triangle. So we're thinking of the number of black cards over the number of triangle cards. So the ratio of black to white cards is 3 to 5, which means that to get from white to black we need to multiply by 3/5. Therefore B is equal to 3/5 W, which implies that W is equal to 5/3 of B. The ratio of circles to triangles is 2 to 7, so therefore to get from triangles to circles we need to multiply by 2/7. This means that C is equal to 2/7 T, and this implies that T is equal to 7/2 of C. So we get 2 to 7 for our ratio of circles to triangles, and the sum of the black and white cards ratio is going to be 8. So we multiply 2 to 7 by 8 and we get 16 to 56 as the ratio of circles to triangle cards. Now that we have 16 to 56, we need to work out how the circles and triangles break down in terms of black and white cards. So we do this as a ratio of 3 to 5, and we can see that we multiply them up to make 16 by multiplying the ratio by 2. Then we do the same for the triangles, and we multiply by 7 to multiply up to get 56 cards in total for the number of triangle cards. So this gives us 21 and 35, and then we can write a ratio for all of the different card types. Then we have the number of black circle cards to white circle cards to black triangle cards to white triangle cards, which is 6 to 10 to 21 to 35. We need to know the fraction of black cards over triangle cards, so we have the total number of black cards as our numerator and the total number of triangle cards as our denominator. So we do 6 plus 21 over 35 plus 21, and this gives us 27 over 56, which is our fraction and our final answer. This is Edexcel GCSE Maths Paper 1H from 2020 all done. If you need any extra help with your maths revision, make sure to hit the link in the description, as I'll be offering online group maths tutoring classes. And if you want any extra maths videos, just hit the links here, and I'll see you in the next one.